It's time for another quick take, ladies and gentlemen. Australian Open starts on the 15th. That is Sunday here. It's Monday in Australia. I can't wait. I'm so glad that it's finally Grand Slam tennis season, and that means it's time to preview the Australian Open, the first slam of the year, the hardest one to predict. I don't have much to go off of, but let's get right to it. And also, just a quick plug, if you haven't seen my entire season preview, where I kind of go player by player and talk about what we can expect from them in 2018, check that out. I'll put the link in the description, and it'll probably be on the end screen as well. All right, we start with Nadal's quarter. We'll take it quarter by quarter here, and I have Rafa coming out of it, the #1 seed. It wasn't that difficult a decision for me. Many people are saying that Nadal was one of the winners of the draw, so meaning that he is one of the easier quarters out of all the top men. Let's take a look at his path. He'd have to beat Victor Estrella Burgos in the first round, Leonardo Mayer in the second, Borna Coric in the third. That's the match where we'll probably be able to see where Nadal's form is at. Coric is good enough where we'll be able to tell most likely if Nadal's game is where it needs to be. But Nadal should beat Coric pretty easily. And then in the fourth round, a round where some of the top men will get really, really tough tests, Nadal, according to my draw, will get the winner of Diego Schwartzman and John Isner. Schwartzman lacks firepower. Isner lacks consistency and the ability to break serve, obviously. So a very favorable fourth round for Nadal, and that brings us to the quarterfinals, where I have him facing Marin Cilic. Now, once again, if you watched my season preview, you'll know that I'm a little bit confused about Cilic, and when I say I'm confused, I mean I'm not sure if he's on the way up or the way down. His age isn't telling me much. His health isn't telling me much. 2017 was an up and down year. That doesn't tell me much. So I'm a little bit confused at Cilic's trajectory, the trajectory of his career. But nonetheless, I have him making the quarterfinals where he would meet Nadal if the seeds hold up. And that looks something like a matchup with João Sousa in the second round, Pablo Cuevas in the third, Pablo Carreño Busta in the fourth. So for Cilic, quite favorable. Players like Cuevas and Carreño Busta, they make a lot of balls, but Cilic has a lot more firepower than both of them. So it should be Cilic and Nadal in the quarterfinals, and I have Rafa Nadal. I looked at the head-to-head for this matchup. It is 5-1 Rafa. The last time Cilic won, it was the first time they ever played, and that was in 2009. So Rafa seems to have Cilic's number and is normally the better player. I have injury concerns about Rafa, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later in the video when I start talking about the semifinals. In the meantime, let's move on to the next quarter. It's Grigor Dimitrov's quarter, and once again, I think the seed holds up and Grigor Dimitrov gets through. Dimitrov had his breakout year in 2017. He's on a roll. He did lose to Nick Kyrgios in the semifinals of Brisbane. And in, one of the highlights of seeing this draw come out was that we could get a rematch of that match here at the Australian Open. My early candidate for match of the tournament is in the fourth round of this quarter, where Dimitrov could possibly face Nick Kyrgios. Let's take a look at how they would get there. So let's go to Dimitrov. So Dimitrov would have a qualifier in the first round, a qualifier in the first round and a qualifier in the second round. David Ferrer in the third round. So I have Ferrer upsetting Andrei Rublev. That's one of the more intriguing first round matchups in that quarter. But I have Dimitrov beating Ferrer, and that's where he faces Kyrgios. Kyrgios, on the other hand, he'd have to upset Joe Willie Tsonga. Only 2 seeds separate the two. Kyrgios is the 17, Tsonga's the 15 seed, so only a 2-seed separation. And Kyrgios would probably be favored. So I say upset. It wouldn't really be an upset, but Kyrgios and Tsonga would meet possibly in the third round, and I have Kyrgios coming out of that. Kyrgios looks very good, very motivated. I'm back and forth on this match in my head, but I'm giving the nod to Dimitrov. The head-to-head is only 2-1. Doesn't tell you much. They're all on outdoor hard courts, which is generally what the Australian Open is, unless it rains, on one of the center courts. So there's not much to really go off of, except what we just saw in Brisbane. In Brisbane, I feel like Kyrgios sort of outserved Dimitrov, but all in all, I'm going with Dimitrov in this match, as you can see on the graphic, and there are two reasons for that. One, I talked about it a bit in the finals of Cincinnati, where Dimitrov actually got the better of Kyrgios to win that title last year. I do like I do think that Dimitrov has a nice tactical advantage against Kyrgios, and that is, I think Kyrgios attacks Dimitrov's forehand wing better than his backhand wing. With the heavy topspin forehand, likes to rip that cross court, and the flat backhand likes to go line with that. That lines up right into Dimitrov's strength, which is the running forehand. So in terms of the directionals, that's a slight edge to Dimitrov. I kind of like how that plays out for him. Ultimately, Kyrgios, as we saw last week, that could be overcome if he serves a lot better than Dimitrov. So Dimitrov needs to do a better job keeping the serving matchup tight. It's harder to outserve someone and win the match like that over the course of 5 sets. Much easier over the course of 3 sets to have 2 really hot serving sets. Although Kyrgios has a special serve, I think the 5-set format is more advantageous for Dimitrov. The second reason is I give Dimitrov the fitness edge. So 5-set format in a major, I'm giving the slight edge to Dimitrov in that matchup. But remember, that's not the quarterfinals. That's just the 4th round matchup. In the quarterfinals, I have Kevin Anderson. Kevin Anderson going through the likes of Denis Istomin, Lucas Pouillet, which could kind of be a 50-50 match, and then ultimately Jack Sock. Jack Sock's the 8 seed, Anderson's the 11, so a slight upset there. Sock has a nice draw. Philip Kohlschreiber, Ivo Karlovic, and then he faces Kevin Anderson. So I don't have much to say about Anderson versus Sock, although I do think that Sock will have a bit of a downswing in 2018. Whereas, Anderson should be able to hold the fort down after that very impressive U.S. Open run. I don't think he'll be making another major final anytime soon. But, the heavy topspin by Sock, the kick serve, the forehand doesn't bother the taller Anderson. I think they're both, similar players. They're going to hold serve a lot. So I got Anderson getting through there. But Dimitrov versus Anderson is a mismatch in terms of creativity, offensive creativity and firepower. So I'm going with Dimitrov to make it out of his quarter. Is that good enough? Is that good enough for y'all? All right. Take a little break. I'm talking really fast right now. I'm going to try to keep this thing moving. Let's move on to Zverev's quarter, a quarter that I do not think that Alexander Zverev will come through. It is the quarter of death, undoubtedly. So, of course, Zverev, the top seed, as the 4 seed in this quarter. Then you got Dominic Thiem, Stan Wawrinka, and the real reason that this is the quarter of death is Novak Djokovic, the 14 seed in this quarter. Certainly not the 14th most dangerous player in the tournament. I could argue that he's the 2nd most dangerous player in the tournament, especially if his elbow is right. And then I also think that the dark horse of the tournament is in this quarter. It's Roberto Bautista Agut. So I really love this quarter, but I hate it for, Alexander Zverev, who has not had his breakthrough in the majors. So let's take a look at this quarter. And first, let's take a look at Zverev's path. So Zverev would have Thomas Fabiano in the first round, no problem there. Kukushkin in the second, no problem. Then Hyun Chung. Now, a lot of people are saying that Zverev could get upset early because he could face his brother, what's his name, Misha Zverev. And, that's always kind of an interesting matchup, some mental nuance there. Or the Australian, the hometown favorite who's back after 2 years of injury-riddled seasons, Thanasi Kokkinakis. But I actually don't think he'll have to face either of those guys. Another seed who I think will be upset in the first round is Sasha's brother, Misha. I think Misha Zverev loses to Hyun Chung in the first round. And in terms of Kokkinakis, I also think Chung takes out Kokkinakis. He had a very impressive end to 2017. And I got a comment in my last video saying that I was sleeping on Chung in my season preview, and I have to agree with him. I did sleep on Chung a little bit. I didn't even mention him. Chung is worth our attention, and I think he'll meet Zverev. But I'm going to give Zverev the benefit of the doubt here. I'm going to say he beats Chung, but that puts him in line for a collision course with Novak Djokovic in the 4th round. Djokovic would have to face Gael Monfils in the 2nd round. That's not ideal. But then I got him facing Jared Donaldson in the 3rd round. I think Jared Donaldson upsets Albert Ramos Vinolas in the 1st round. So Djokovic against Monfils is always an interesting matchup. But Djokovic, he hasn't had too much trouble. But, you know, similar to Coric playing Nadal in the 3rd round, that'll at least be a match where we'll see if Djokovic is at the level he needs to be. Right now, I'm not too worried about Djokovic because, you know, he says he feels great. He said he's playing pain-free. It's not 100% clear path for Djokovic because he did say that he could still withdraw. He still said that he's not 100% confident. But the things Djokovic is saying coming into this tournament kind of remind me of the things that Roger Federer was saying coming into this tournament last season. He's saying, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be back on the court playing tennis. Whatever happens, happens. It's a very dangerous mindset for opponents of a player who's kind of playing with that freedom of being happy to be here. It's the opposite of pressure, and pressure makes players play worse unless you're, you know, a rare breed. So in that respect, I'm very high on Djokovic. If his elbow isn't right and he's saying that, you know, it's still causing him issues, which I'm shocked by, well, then that's a problem. But for now, I'm going to say Djokovic has no problem, and I got to give him the edge against Alexander Zverev. This is once again, I'm not going off of much because I haven't seen much of Djokovic and I haven't seen much of Zverev so far this season. But my gut tells me that this is Djokovic's time. He's going to get right back into the mix here in 2018. As long as he can stay healthy, he's gotten a mental refresher, a physical refresher. He's still young, and he still sounds very, very motivated. So Djokovic comes out of Zverev's corner. Hold on, I'm having a little computer issue. All right, sorry about that. We left off moving on to Federer's quarter of the draw, and people are saying that Roger Federer has not been blessed with a very favorable draw. So let's take a look at that. Bedane in the 1st round, Struff in the 2nd, no problem. Gasquet in the 3rd round. Now, Gasquet just beat Nadal in a warm-up tournament, or a warm-up match. I guess it's not even a tournament. I wouldn't read that much into that. Federer should have Gasquet, who's aging and declining. And then Sam Querrey. It'll be Querrey or Raonic. You know, they're both big servers who cannot match up with Roger Federer in a baseline rally. So Federer moves on to the quarterfinals, and then I suppose it gets interesting. But I honestly have no idea what people are talking about. I really don't think that this is that tough a draw for Roger Federer. Certainly not until the quarterfinals. Now, in the quarterfinals, he would most likely face either Juan Martin Del Potro or David Goffin. I have Del Potro. Del Potro's in really good form here. Now, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because there are still warm-up tournaments being played. He's about to play Ferrer in the semifinals of some warm-up tournament. I believe it's Auckland. So, you know, I haven't... There's still work to be done that I'm not getting to watch on the part of guys like Juan Martin Del Potro. But Del Potro has a lot more firepower than Goffin, and he's in good form right now. So I'll take Del Potro in that match. And then we have a classic matchup that we've seen a lot, and I love to talk about. The fans love it. It always brings a lot of traffic to my channel, and that is Roger Federer versus Juan Martin Del Potro. Now, Federer has won 5 out of the last 6, but Del Potro got that really, really, really important match that was the U.S. Open quarterfinal match last season. Then the winner went on to face Nadal. The winner was Del Potro, and Nadal beat Del Potro. So that's kind of what we're going off of. But then Federer came back, and two times after that match in 2017, Federer got his revenge on Del Potro, and he beat him twice. So I really think that when Federer's at his best and Del Potro's at his best, I stick by this, and I've always stuck by this. I think Federer generally wins. Federer gets into tactical issues, when he's stubborn about attacking Del Potro's backhand. So I think that happened in the 2009 U.S. Open final when Del Potro beat him in the U.S. Open final, and I think it happened last year in the quarterfinals where Federer just is too stubborn tactically, and he's a player that rarely changes his tactics for his opponent. That's Roger Federer. But against Del Potro, when he does do it, when he uses a lot of chip, keeping it low to Del Potro's backhand, and when he's able to approach Del Potro's backhand when maybe generally he'd go to the forehand wing, I think Federer has a lot of success. It also shouldn't be ignored that Roger Federer, just was not in good form for the U.S. Open. And after that match against Del Potro, he said, if I was going to play anyone at a high level, I was going to lose. He just, the wear and tear caught up to him. And Del Potro was physically, believe it or not, even after a 5-set fourth-round match, Del Potro was physically in better shape. So that's all I'll say on that. I have Roger Federer. Hopefully they play, and we can take another look at that matchup because I enjoy that matchup immensely. So here's what we got. And I will show you my entire bracket to end the video. But right now, here's what we got. We got Nadal and Dimitrov. And, I should have done this in a more suspenseful way because I just showed you everything all at once. We got Nadal and Dimitrov, and this video, let me put it this way. This video is coming out 10 minutes later because I couldn't decide on Nadal and Dimitrov. I was sitting here, and I had no idea who to choose, Nadal or Dimitrov. I could not decide. And I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt to, the U.S. Open champion, a guy who's accomplished, in Nadal, way more than Dimitrov has accomplished. And, a guy who beat Grigor Dimitrov in the Australian Open semifinals last season. This would be a rematch. That match was 5 sets. It was tight, but Nadal won. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But, I can only go off of what I've seen. I say this all the time when I'm previewing these majors. And how could I pick a guy in Nadal who, the last I've seen him, this is the last I've seen Nadal, pulling out of Paris, pulling out of the year-end championships, then having an offseason that I would think he'd get into full health and recuperate. Then he has to pull out of warm-ups. He comes back to play one warm-up, and he loses in straight sets to Richard Gasquet. So I'm putting him in the semifinals. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, as far as that goes. But in terms of Rafa Nadal's knees, I was expecting him to be 100% come the Australian Open, and it doesn't seem that he is 100%. And I don't feel right picking Nadal against a guy who has been on an absolute tear, won those year-end championships, has had a healthy summer, has played the requisite warm-ups, has looked good in the warm-ups, and is a guy, 26-year-old, ripe, on the up, looking to break out in 2018. So I'm picking Dimitrov in that match. And then on the bottom, Djokovic and Federer. Once again, this comes down to health. This comes down to match toughness. Djokovic, a little bit uncertain still about the elbow. So I'm going to roll with Roger Federer. It really does come down to health. Federer is the overwhelming favorite in this tournament. And I think that we should remind ourselves that when Roger Federer was fresh and healthy last season, he was virtually unbeatable. And when I say unbeatable, we're talking about blowing out Rafa Nadal at Indian Wells, handling him in Miami. This is after coming back in the 5th set when it looked like he was going to lose the match in the Australian Open finals, and then winning Wimbledon without dropping a set. This is the Roger Federer we were talking about in 2017 until wear and tear set in. So that's why Federer is the favorite. That's why I have Federer beating Dimitrov. And it's a matchup that, by the way, Roger Federer absolutely dominates Grigor Dimitrov on a regular basis. So I would pretty much think that if Federer and Dimitrov face in the finals. It'll be 3 sets, maybe 4. And I think that Roger Federer is the Australian Open champion for the 2nd year in a row. So now I will show you my full bracket. So you can pause the video because I'm not going to go, whoops, my bad. I'm not going to go so slow that you guys are going to be able to read the whole thing. So you're going to have to pause the video. So here's the top. I'm going to start scrolling. I'm going to try to scroll steady. Okay, you can pause it. I'm going to keep going. Oh my God, you see? This computer's the worst. It's not my fault. Hopefully you've seen all this and I didn't miss anything for you guys. Now we're working our way to the bottom, almost at Roger Federer at the bottom of this bracket, and there he is, and that'll do it for me here. Can't wait to deliver you guys Australian Open content over the next 2 weeks. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.